is because there are so many layers to even a tree, the mahua tree, which is shown by the Gons, for example. You not only look at the beauty of the way the leaves and the tree is made by the artist, but the mahua tree also speaks of a complete life cycle. Everything for the Gons is around the mahua tree. It is like a kalpa vriksha, or it is like the wish fulfilling tree for them. They live under it, they eat the fruit, they drink the wine, the bark is used to keep the insects away. Every part of the mahua tree has some form and function. This is what happens in the language of the indigenous people. But when you are looking at a fine art practice and you are looking at a textile artist making the same tree, the tree or the kalpa vriksha or the wish fulfilling tree, what you're looking at? Beauty. The way the artist is representing the wish fulfilling tree. And where does the tree come from? It comes from the Samudra Manthan, the churning of the sea of ocean. The Kalpavriksha emerges from there, where the tree fulfills everything. But what do you see in this Kalpavriksha, which is shown by a craftsperson, which is shown by a textile person, which is shown by a weaver, which is shown by a designer, which is shown by a fine artist, or the way the photographer is capturing the image, or the way it is being shown through a virtual reality or an augmented reality. It is that whoosh fulfilling tree which is coming as a form. But each of these disciplines, each of these materials, it is the way the person who's producing it or creating that wish fulfilling tree, how much of an immersive experience does he bring the viewer into? That is of utmost importance. And again, the oneness comes into of creativity. Is he evoking an experience of beauty, or even the concept of the aesthetics of the ugly, that also has an emotion. Is it creating an emotion which moves you? So oneness comes into that again through the years, through the ages, through the materials.
Right, thank you. And that is a perspective which I think is going to take us a little more understand more when we hear a little more about it. But I'm going to ask Jaspal now to um, uh, take us through your journey of understanding how have you reached this concept of oneness. And your journey, as I understand it, started with being an artist, went on to becoming a designer, of course, for a more practical space. And then you have found your journey back, or you've gone back to being an artist. And would you be able to talk to us about how did that oneness emerge from all these different facets happening to you, Dr. Jaspal?
Thank you, Nate. So basically, I started off as I have been sketching and being into installations for theatrics during my school days itself. So that was my first exposure to art, and it was a very personal kind of an expression of creativity for me. And then when I moved on to design, it got a commercial aspect to it. Of course, when you come to design, creativity has a commercial aspect, and then that's where you start thinking of being creative for a commercial market. And uh, and then design took up a personal space. Of course, it was always for me. On I still continued my practice of sketching. Loved working with pencil, charcoal, and similar materials. Then as it moved on, I think pandemic was a time when it actually the whole idea of oneness started coming in, because each one of us was connected with someone whom we did not know directly, indirectly, we were connecting. So that was a kind of connection and oneness that we experienced during pandemic. We didn't know. We started thinking beyond barriers. We started thinking beyond anything which divides us, thinking beyond the species, beyond gender, And that's what connected us together. And that started becoming an expression for me. And then I went back and started looking at what do the philosophical masters have to say about it, and understand the analogy behind it. That's where it started taking an art expression. And then the Sikh Chamber of Commerce came in. They said we need to put it onto a public platform, and so that's how the journey has been. And of course, in past few years, I have been very closely associated with craft, so art and design in a section. But uh, from working with Sumaya Kalavidya with artisans to my doctoral work, and then at Kalhat, where we actually started challenging artisans and giving them new opportunities to experiment and look at craft in a different perspective. Because for me, craft was not just about um, the hands or the body. It was about a connection between body and hand and mind. So all of them connecting together. So it's a treasure that the creator creates and someone who takes it home. So that's perspective of craft is something that kept me connected to it, and that's where we started art residencies at Kalhat also, and then expressions and narratives continued in craft. So that's where the merging of barriers between art and craft started happening with us in Lucknow with the artisans, and with this expression with the personal thing that I moved on to expressing the analogies as art, which of course embroidery was a strong medium which I have been around, connected with. I'm with the embroiderers all the time, so that became a medium to express this, and that's where it brought me back to a personal expression. Of course, the design continues, the commercial aspect continues, but this expression and working in tandem with artisans and engaging in a dialogue about art, about where even they don't have to think that I have to embroider only the neckline, and they start understanding the concept, they start working on it, and that's where um, the art starts beginning to happen. It's about the engagement, it's about the expression. It's not just my expression, it's the expression of every artisan. From every word that is inscribed in these artworks, um, it's that kind of engagement that I'm working on at present.
Right. So thank you for sharing that. But a question about when you work with the artisans, and of course perhaps you have to understand how they work, and they too need to understand the language that you talk. So when you talk of working on oneness, is it that the artisans are taken through a kind of a complex discussion about what it means to them? How do they want to express it? What was the process that you worked on with the artisans and to create that whole collaboration, especially for the very practical functioning or taking up of this work?
Um, this work almost started as an impromptu kind of a thing at Kalhat. That's where probably the roots for this lie, because we have been facing challenges working with artisans that most of them are do not know any particular language. So we thought embroidery is one skill. They prefer using needle instead of pen. So what we started off was scripting through needle, and what do they write when they're learning a language. So we thought, let's take up things from philosophies of masters like Kabir, Guru Nanak, Vivekanand. What do they have to say? Say women empowerment, women's equality, about nature. So that's where this whole concept started, and it started triggering off from there, because how we then abstracted it, their interest started growing, and that's where it came back to Sangre also. That because some of the artisans at Sangre are also who have graduated from Kalhat. So that engagement with craft, with art, with the philosophies continued. And initially, for that matter, when we started this project here, it was like in another kind of embroidery. But slowly, when they realized, uh, just wanted to understand the whatever the Shabad or the Doha or anything said, and they would understand the analogy before starting the work. So that's where the working or co-working started happening, because that's when the expressions started coming in, like a small sketch. They would themselves fill in certain details or script out something because they understand the whole concept of it now. So that was a kind of engagement, because that was something they appreciated. Um, and the respect they started giving to their own craft and the way they started treating craft, because it was no more about a commercial embroidery for someone. It was about engaging, narrating through your craft, and enjoying your craft to an extent. It was a delightful experience for all of them. And that's where the engagement started growing. And I think everyone appreciates. And that's cross cultural, cross faith engagement is something which all of us had a lot of things to learn across in this journey.
Right. So I'm going to move on to Dr. Pandey. In your years of curating art, probably you have seen various forms of a different form of oneness happening with perhaps mediums, with techniques, with thought processes. I was wondering whether has art been represented through craftsmanship, certain kind of indigenous craftsmanship by artists, and how do you see this kind of a marriage happening at all? I just wanted to understand whether these things are common. Dr. Pandey, you need to put on your audio.
As I believe, anything can happen in the creative world. You can have marriages, you can have amicable divorces, you can have relationships, you can have any. So, what I feel is that the crafts can stand on their own. The creative process is so strong that these are just disciplines which are, formalized and given a meaning by modernity. So,
Right.
craft, art, for me, everything is a creative process. And I think a craftsman can be as creative as a fine artist. A
Mhm.
person who has grown up within an atmosphere like following received wisdom, like the craftspeople. They don't go to formal schools, but some of them can beat a fine artist absolutely hollow because they have learned art from their mother's womb. So,
Mhm.
they just become better and better, and practice makes perfect. The other thing is that you can have a marriage between them. You can see how Arpana Kaur worked with the Varli painters. You can see how, there was this wonderful show which was done by Jaya Jetli. It was called Akshar, where there was a marriage between art, craft, and design. So there are very collaborative processes, particularly in the design aspect. You've got artists who are intervening with craftspeople and creating new languages. So
Right.
I have seen a lot of that happening, not just in India, but anywhere across the world. You also have an example of, say, for example, a wonderful lady from Madhya Pradesh called Judea Bai, who's making these wonderful mahua trees. Or you have Jangar Singh Sham, whose work was with great artists at the Centre Pompidou in Paris in the exhibition called Dalater. You have the Aboriginal Australian artists who are showing side by side contemporary art. So you cannot, I don't think I would put them in different silos. In fact, I
Mhm.
would free flowing river between all the arts. So I would just say that, it depends.
Right.
Craftsmen can hold their own, there can be a marriage, there can be a collaboration. There are unending possibilities.
Right. I also have been wondering whether the craftsmen have been as exposed to the space of art as perhaps an artist might have had that kind of an exposure through the through the formal training that they normally undergo, and they do get to explore various spaces and mediums through technology and so forth. But on the other hand, I do think the craftspeople, because of perhaps the space that they work in and their focus on making a livelihood out of the crafts that they work with, and I guess they, even if they were working on the skills and the craftsmanship, it is to actually reach a level of commercial success rather than an artistic achievement. So, do you think that is a platform, or that's something that one should consider, especially to bring that craftsman to that exposure?
I think you have a fair point there. But Neen, I'll say one thing. Today, with smartphones, even the craftsmen, what you call the boondocks like Raghurajpur or any other small uh, Rajasthan village where the bheels are, or a remote village in Chhattisgarh. The point is that the smartphone gives access. But yes, you are right. The craftspeople, because of their various limitations, have not been able to travel either physically or mentally, and it makes a big difference. But it doesn't mean that they, a really truly creative person can be hampered uh, because of lack of travel. However, having said that, I think it is important and people are looking into it. You know,
Mm.
even a place like Bharat Bhavan in Bhopal started it many years ago, giving craftspeople, giving people from the interiors a chance to interact with more well traveled people. And I think the process has started. And with the opening up of boundaries, with the opening up of the world, things will change. But yes, there is a bit of a handicap for people in the crafts world because of livelihood, because of lack of travel, lack of opportunities. But I think somewhere, sometime, the bridge will narrow down. But also, there can be a kind of homogeneity which may come in. So, to celebrate the difference, maybe it works well this way.
Right. So, on the other hand, Jaspal, I'm going to ask you a question about, craft has its identity and its image, which is pretty fixed because of what we have been seeing it as so far. And so, when you take crafts and put it into a framework of an artistic expression, um, do you think that crafts changes and it is no longer viewed as uh, some kind of a craft expression? Do you think it sort of loses its identity and is just looked upon as a skill then? Did you try to explore that question when you were working on your exhibition?
Um, Nain, good question. But the way we are treating craft, be it art or be it how we are treating it commercially, we have come to a level where only the skill aspect of the craft is left. We have the thinking hands are no more part of the craft. And when we start these projects, when we started initiating these projects, it's a kind of a detour and looking back at the same kind of a system where there's a thought process that goes. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's a thought process where artisans are instigated or to think and have a dialogue and while they're embroidering. So that's a slow transition that we want to make because um, we have gone through 200 years, I would say, of where the craft just became synonymous with the skills. It's the finesse. It's about the skill. It's about the working hand. It was never connected to the soul or mind, as historians and scholars have expressed, because craft has always been about uh, mind, soul, and body working in tandem. Body being represented through hand. So this is somewhere where we have the artist is a trigger to think, and that's the trigger we have introduced when we start working internationally. We see a lot of artists who themselves are embroidering, as embroidery as a medium to in art. We have a lot of interesting queries coming in at Kalhat itself, where a lot of artists want to come and use embroidery as an expression. We already have art residency going on with renowned artist T. Venkanna. Then we have certain other artisans coming from across the world. So we are at Sangre, we are already working with one of the artists from Delhi, Manisha. So this is something where I think it's giving a different engagement, because recently I had an dialogue with a very senior artisan who has been embroidering for say more than 25 years now, and very highly skilled. She has trained a lot many artisans, but given the choice, when I asked her, what would you want to do, continue as embroidery, she said, uh, going by my gut, I want to just be with art now. I don't enjoy garments anymore. So then she said, no, but I will try to do a balance of both the things. So I'll do some of that and some of that. I don't totally want to. So there's that factor. Even if there's a transition that's happening, there is a certain amount of I would say they still lack the risk taking, because it's an unknown territory that they are entering, but
Right.
they're enjoying it, I think, and that's where if someone is getting engaged in it, I think that's the way forward, and
Right.
that's where
So could I ask you to just share with all of us what is this artist residency at Kalhat?
So basically, at Kalhat, what we started off as in the first year when we had started the curriculum. Um, we always try to challenge our artisans, who were always very skilled artisans who came for a design and entrepreneurial education at Kalhat, and we tried to challenge them with new situations. At times, they would have to interpret dance mudras into embroidery and things like that. So, final dissertation for them was. When they had to face and co-work with an artist and explicit work with artists. So that's where the mode of expression started changing, and that's where the artist residency started off, and it got a very impressive response from the artist community as well, and as well as the when it was exhibited in Bombay and other parts of the world. So that's where the whole genesis of this art residency lies, and it became kind of permanent project for those artisans who want to get come back and engage on these kind of projects with artisans. So these are alumni of Kalat who are working with the senior artists now. So that's a kind of thing there.
Right. So thank you. I am. It's been a bit tight because we really have a very short period. But I'm just going to ask you to answer in one line, Dr. Pandey. What do you see? How do you see art moving forward in terms of its collaboration with many other concepts, and where does aesthetics play a role? Is it going to be as freely is it going to develop completely in a different manner? I especially after this whole pandemic experience, I'm not talking about in terms of emotions, but I think it has brought about a different perspective, absolutely life changing perspective for all of us. How do you see the future art being presented, uh, let's say, in the coming years?
That's another very tough question.
Yes, I know we need to have a very long webinar with you. It would be lovely to do that. But today, since we are really short of time, maybe a very short answer.
So, Ning, I think you are right about one thing. It has altered all of us, definitely. I would like to be positive and say that it gave us all time to sit down, to take a deep breath and inhale the roses, as it were. There was no pressure to produce. For those who took the pandemic and this period as a self as a self, I won't even, yeah, imposed really sabbatical like I did, it was wonderful for me because I got time to sit, to reflect, ruminate, to rejig, to relook, and to readjust. It was literally like you are defragging a computer and starting afresh. And I think what one realized, one doesn't even know how these 2 years have passed, 18 or 20 months. It seems like yesterday. But for me, there is no FOMO. There is no fear of being missed out. I think it is more about gratitude and acceptance. It is more about becoming more interior, more into looking at yourself. And really, money for me is no longer an issue. It is about how much of joy, how much of satisfaction it gives you. And I think for many people, things have altered. For some people, money has become more important. For others, it has no meaning. So it depends on who has the grace. So if you have grace, you are in a more elevated space. And I hope all of us have the grace.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jaspal, I would like you to give us a kind of a your opinion on what's going to happen to the way you see oneness going forward. Will there be more forms of it?
Um, I think, Nain, that's a journey to begin. I think we are treading on the path, on this path of oneness. We didn't know 3 months back that we would be coming up with an exhibition in 3 months when we started. It was just an interaction between me and another artisan, and that we started off the project. And within 3 months, we are creating a series of artwork, which then I got in touch with Dr. Alka Pandey, who has been my senior professor from when I was doing my design education. And it moved on from there. And then people started joining in, and the project has just taken off from there. So what will be the future trends for it? We do want to keep the expression on, and what will be the future mediums? Definitely craft is an important, it's close to my heart, so that's going to be a medium. But yes, it might take from 2D artwork, it might move on to 3D artworks. We are attempting that. These are certain kind of projects that we do plan to engage audience.
Thank you. Wow. We really look forward to that. And of course, to begin with, first let me thank Dr. Alka Pandey for your time, for your huge experience, which shows through the words that you're speaking, and would love to have much longer sessions so that we really start understanding a lot of this in depth. But thank you very much. And thank you, Jaspal, for, opening your heart to us and sharing with us a lot of things that you are planning to do. Thank you very much. Thank you, the team in the background. You've been doing a lot of managing. So thanks to all of you. And thank you, participants. We look forward to you joining us again. Jaspal, would you like to announce very soon?
Thanks everyone for joining us. We look forward to your participation on 2nd of November when we have the theme as oneness as a culture and honesty in making. So that's the next webinar that we are going to have, where we will have the author of book Walking with Nanak, Harun Khalid, joining us, and an art director, actor, and script writer, many more things to say, Mr. Kuljit Singh, who has also curated Dastan Gois on Sikh gurus and their philosophy. There we'll try to look into how uh, being honest is a cultural tradition beyond boundaries, how it's part of every engagement that you have, and that's how it's beyond cultures. So see you on 2nd of November at 6:30 p.m. And I would also like to extend invitation for the exhibition at Visual Arts Gallery from 24th of November till 28th of November, and look forward to having you there at India Habitat Center, New Delhi. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. Thanks a lot, Nain, for agreeing
Thank
to moderate.
you. I'm most delighted to be a part of all this. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.